Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Brian, and this is Crystal.
Hi.
And we normally aren't live on a Sunday evening, but we just had to jump on and give our initial review and reaction of the new Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movie that just kind of got released in a sneak preview for I think this weekend and maybe next until they kind of do the
Yeah.
official launch. So which was really cool. So we got a chance to go check that out. If you are new to the Geek Philosophy side of things because you normally watch us on Critical Café Live, we've kind of got two different audiences sometimes that watch us for two different reasons. Welcome if you're joining us from the Geek Philosophy side and you haven't seen Crystal as much because you haven't been watching the Critical Cafe. This is the kind of stuff we do in Critical Cafe where we meet and we talk about things. That one tends to be focused on the Critical Role campaign, so feel free to check that out if you are interested in our thoughts on that campaign. We do those episode by episode as well. So I'm going to get all these disclaimers out of the way and then we'll just jump right in. First thing I wanted to say is I know, especially if you've been following the channel, that there has been controversy around Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro with the OGL thing and all of those things. And some people either are completely back to supporting Wizards of the Coast, others are not supporting them at all. I just want to let you know that my thoughts are kind of been clear through other videos. So I didn't have a problem going to watch the movie. I'm very hesitant about other things that they're doing from a publishing perspective or with some of the creative control that they try to force into the independent creators. But I'm happy with some of the changes that they've made so far, and I've just loved D&D since I was a kid, and I've watched every D&D movie that's ever been out. If you're brand new to D&D, you might think this is the first one. It's not. There have been some other horrible D&D movies, but horrible in a way that we still love D&D and went to watch them, and we supported them at that time because we were just happy D&D movies were being made. And that was before the days of Lord of the Rings movies and Harry Potter movies and all those things. So I'm just happy to get a chance to go watch another D&D movie. So just all that disclaimer stuff out of the way. If you are not a fan of going to watch the movie, no worries. You do you. We're just giving you our take on things. We support you either way, whatever your call is on whether or not you're going to be watching this in the theaters or not. So, all right, having said all that,
Yes.
we had a chance to go. What was really funny is that when we got there, we had some time. And so we ordered some food, and because our theater there has sort of a cafe built into the theater, and we got some food, and it was done like quicker than normal. So we had some time to sit in the actual seating area before we went into the theater. Usually we just take our food into the theater, and while we're sitting there, it's pretty amazing the variety of people that were there to see this movie. Right, like we had.
Yeah.
I would assume college age group on one side of us. We had another really charming couple that was sitting next to us, and we had a really great conversation about D&D with them while we were sitting there playing rollies, by the way.
Yes.
We had our dice, so while we were killing some time, we were playing rollies. Crystal ended up winning, but
Yes.
yeah. And it's our version of rollies. I don't know what the official version is, but we were rolling some d20s. So anyway, so I thought it was really like, didn't you think it was kind of great to see like the different people there?
Yeah.
Just kind of like checking it out. It wasn't as packed as going to a con or anything, but it was still kind of interesting to see the different age groups and the variety of people.
It was a 2:00 Sunday movie, so
right, yeah.
You're getting a little bit later than matinee-ish, I guess, but still. Probably that and Shazam are the only movies that people would have been there to see.
Yeah.
So, and then we saw tons of Critical Role outfits and shirts and hoodies and, things. So we definitely knew we were among like kind.
Yeah. And it's a great point because, even on our way in to go see the movie, when the ticket taker was taking the ticket stub.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, so you're going to see the D&D? Do you watch Legends of Loch Machina?" And we were like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What's your favorite character?" Like, just the fact that we've got, that in the culture right now, just, is really
as
cool.
and as we're walking by, he's like, my favorite is grog.
And I was like, I don't even know how to answer that as I'm walking through it. There's too many.
I didn't either, honestly.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard with Vox Machina because I didn't start with them. I started with season 2. With the Mighty Nine. So with season 1, again, it's hard for me to say I have a preference because I have a preference when I'm watching the animated series.
Yes, yeah.
But I know that people's preference for the characters in the animated series is different than what the original casting, of the show is because, or the first season, because, they shortened everything, they made it all pretty, and I think people's opinions are skewed depending upon what they see first.
It's such a good point you make because, like, he didn't say Critical Role. He said, "Have you been watching Vox Machina?" So it lets me think he's probably a fan of the animated series. It doesn't necessarily mean that he even knows about the other stuff. Right. Maybe he does because he made the connection with D&D. But I've got to think that in recent years, or at least in the last couple years, the most popular, really, D&D series or any type of entertainment sort of production that was like scripted stuff was probably that Legend of Vox Machina series. Not for kids, so this is a good chance to get some kids involved with D&D with this D&D movie. But yeah, it's cool for me to be in a time where like people know about what's going on with this when nobody really understood or knew this, really 12 years ago, 20 years ago, it was really a niche audience and it's really growing. So anyway, so let's take this in a couple different points of view, if you don't mind. Let's think first of all, like if we're going into the movie, let's talk about the movie sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
First of all, if you don't want to be spoiled, do not watch from here. Because we are going to be talking about things. Overarchingly, we don't want to tell the whole story, but there will be things that we will mention. So if you're somebody who you don't like spoilers, you don't want to keep watching or come back to us after you've watched the movie because we don't want to spoil anything for you.
So down in the ticker below, you will see this will be going. If it gets annoying, I'm sorry, but I want to make sure at any point someone comes in, they know we may be talking about some things. We will try our best not to do anything to spoil the plot, like Crystal was saying, but we want to give our opinion of this. So having said that, what do you think about just as a movie? Kind of forget our connection to D&D and how much we already understand about it. If you can put it aside and say, what would you say about it as a movie?
So if I was just going to the movies to watch an entertaining show, movie, whatever, it is definitely worth it. It's not, I would say the CGI is kind of hit or miss in some areas. But that being said, it's not horrible. I think given today's standards of like high budget films, it could be considered cheesy or bad. But overall, I think for the type of movie that it is, I think it lends a little bit to the overall feel of the movie because the movie does have a lot of humor. It's got a lot of dialogue back and forth with it's like just on the right side of cheesy.
Yes,
or,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
It's definitely got the feel of it being an adventure with strong personalities.
Totally agree with that. And I would go far to say like it's not on the same level if you're going in there to watch fantastic cinema that will get Oscars and you're not going to get that. But if you're going in to watch sort of an adventure movie in the same vein that you would maybe a Marvel movie or one of the DC movies, that kind of tone to it, I think this is sort of in that wheelhouse, right? It's definitely fantasy, but it has the comedic elements to it. It's got the overarching plot to it, and all those things that I think are on par, not necessarily with the interest level of the same fandom, but like a feel of a Marvel movie. I think it kind of matches up with that. and I think the action, to your point, like the visual effects were hit or miss. Like some of them were really well done, I thought. But to your point, like about them being slightly on the cheesy side, but almost intentionally, I think
Yes.
it's because of the source material. And you, those of you that are D&D fans, and you're like, well, D&D happens in your head. Yes, but there's also been art throughout the years of
Yeah.
D&D, and they're kind of using references from art that's been released throughout. So you can kind of tell that they knew what they were doing as far as taking source images from painters over the years and artists that were sort of describing things and using that to paint the picture of the world. To be honest, the things that I thought on the technical side that weren't as good were less the animated monsters and things like that. It was the backdrops of the cities and stuff seemed a little bit off. It seemed almost like they were using like a painted backdrop, like from back in
Mm.
the 80s type of thing.
Might be
But
a
again,
matte painting,
matte painting,
like they
yeah.
used to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it's minor. Like these are just minor quibbles. I think for the most part, like it did not pull me out of the movie to say
Yeah.
that there was anything wrong with what's going on. I will say, from a movie perspective, I thought the choreography for the fights was really good for what they were doing. Really well done. Like it made
Yeah.
it feel like an actual battle, and
Yeah.
it was fantastical and lots of stuff
Yeah.
going on. But yeah,
So if,
I thought that was great.
in the same vein, if we're talking about just watching it as a movie, I would say acting cast was done well.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody really, I think, embodied their role.
Yep.
I think that the choreography, the fights were done really, really well. Um, Especially some of the melee fights.
Yes.
There's a little bit of humor in with a little bit of like, barbarian roughness, but at the same time, like sitting through it as a fan of D&D, you're going, "Oh, they didn't roll good. Oh, that's, like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going, "Oh, okay. Well, that might not in a regular movie where it's just this like, like you mentioned Marvel before, like where everything's hitting and like there's so much luck on the side of the good
Yeah.
guys, and like some of them it's not necessarily like that in a D&D
Yes.
game. And I think the movie kind of portrayed that really well.
Yeah.
The scenes were great. Some of the acting was a little cheesy, but that I think was intentional.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
and then
I
it
think it
was
wasn't as.
pretty. It was
Sorry. Go ahead.
beautiful, but
Yeah.
I do think that there were some things that weren't quite realistic looking.
Yeah, and to your point, like it was some of the things were almost too pretty. Like
Yes.
if you play D&D in a very in your mind and your table, you play D&D so that everything is hyper realistic. Where you have a campaign that you're going, where you feel like you want to see the person cleaning up the stuff on the street and their trash and it's dirty and it's grungy because you make it in your table setting is a more grungy medieval looking dirty atmosphere. It wasn't that, right? Like you didn't get that. Maybe the prison, but like other than that, like you're not really seeing that. And to be honest, makes sense for a very high fantasy campaign world. Like this was set in Forgotten Realms. For those of you that don't know, Forgotten Realms is a campaign world, one of the many campaign worlds of Dungeons and Dragons. So there's a lot of magic there. So, easy to clean up when you've got magic.
Yeah,
So anyway,
yeah.
so there's lots of things that you can kind of forgive. At the end, at the other side of this, so we talked about it like from just going and seeing a movie. Before we get into some of the specifics that you like, I have a question to ask about. Do you feel as if the movie portrayed a game of D&D? Meaning, like, do you think the intent behind the writers was to make it be like, this is what, if it was scripted and acted out and we had a budget for your game and you told us what your game was and how things went, this is what could be done? Or do you think this was just a regular movie script that was just paying homage to D&D, like, and wasn't meant to feel as if it was a game that you were watching?
No, I feel like it was definitely written from the viewpoint of it being a narrated game.
I
There
agree.
was too much in every single scene there was no way it could have they could have went back into a script and just tweaked it. I feel like the goal was this is an adventure, and these are the plot hooks, and these are the different things that we're going to do, and these are the people we're going to introduce, right? So you were immersed in that. It was a game.
Yeah, I agree. And we didn't talk, it's just for everybody watching, we didn't talk about all of this stuff ahead of time. We talked about a few things that we wanted to cover on the show, but this is the first time we're having this conversation too, which is why I'm asking. I completely agree. And I feel this is good. It's almost better as someone that's played D&D to go in looking at it. If you look at this, you don't see, and this is maybe a spoiler because some of you may be waiting for big reveal to show that people were actually at the table and narrating. It's not that spoiler, however, it feels as if that's what was going on in the game. There's even some times where when the character is narrating what their backstory is, and then they cut to the flashback of them telling the story of the backstory, which happens all the time in a D&D game.
And then he says, but hold on, I'm telling my backstory.
Exactly.
Not only does he start telling it, then it flashes back to it. Then he even verbally says in present time, wait, hold on, I'm waiting for this my back, so
that meta
it's
layer
layers
to it. Yeah. It's I'm actually saying my backstory.
Yes.
So I think that kind of feel so that in general is how I was looking at the game or the movie from the point after the opening sequence up until when the titles hit. When the movie title hit the screen, I knew that's what I was watching, or at least that's what I felt like I was watching. I was watching a game that was turned into a movie. And so where can I watch the clips at? Don't
know. We got early viewing, so I'm not 100% sure if there's clips out yet.
I have no clue. This is all theaters, guys. So if you want to see it in theaters, you'll have to go do it. But there's no clips available. Hopefully nobody's pirating. Please don't do that. But so I think that's kind of the good way to think of the movie going in, and it kind of gives you a good level set going in. Now, having said that, did you have any highlights for the movie that stick out in your mind?
Okay, so before we go into highlights, though, I did want to mention one thing, and we didn't talk about this earlier. There was just a handful of things we said earlier, but we didn't really go into depth about what we were really going to talk about.
Yeah,
one of the things that did stick out to me, though, and this is from a movie perspective versus fandom.
Okay.
I was a little, I don't know if disappointed is the word, but I felt like once we got to the major maze Coliseum fight stuff, I really, really had this huge flashback to the Hunger Games and how the dome was laid out and how the game masters were around a table. And, because they even had, granted, in the movie, it was, I think, supposed to look like it was a betting scene versus a controlling scene, but it still seemed so much like the town, even how the people were dressed, and it wasn't quite as on the nose as how it was in the Hunger Games with the over the top costumes. But I don't know, it that was the one thing that I was a little bit oh, come on, guys, did you just say, hey, let's make it like the Hunger Games?
So here's I completely agree with what you just said, and I think that point of view is 100% valid. Here's my other take on it. My other take on it is that D&D has been around so long that the Hunger Games came out after, and a lot of these things existed, and so many things have creeped into the culture and influenced stuff that people had no idea that they either started with D&D or they draw the same influence as D&D.
Right.
So for me at least, even though I see similarities in recent years, I kind of give a little bit of a pass because it's sort of like when we were originally you were but you were heavily a World of Warcraft player way back, right? And when we would talk about things, I was oh yeah, that's in D&D, that's called this in D&D from 1979 or whatever. So we would talk about stuff, and it wasn't that you didn't know that existed, but there's influences.
Right.
So I think that's kind of
Right.
what I'm seeing a little bit more, but I don't know. I agree with
And
what you're saying. It does
some of
harken
that, like
back
you
to
said,
it.
is
So
it's a perspective.
yeah,
I think that people who are younger than us, younger than me,
oh,
probably will see that more. You
they
know,
definitely will. Yeah,
whereas people who are older and have been immersed in the game a little bit more, or who played longer than me, will go, "Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg?" Type. You know, like
exactly.
D&D
Yeah,
was here first, guys. And
yeah,
I get it. I get it. It was just visually, you're going, "Huh,
100%. Yeah,
okay." All right. Well,
I
we kind
agree.
of seen something like it before.
Well, and D&D was influenced by all of stuff from Tolkien and from the pulp
Right.
novels before that and everything else. So like it's all one big cyclical thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're completely right. Um, yeah. So, but
Okay.
having said that, so what are your highlights to you? What are some things that you think are
So, first off, the dialogue was really good. I thought that the banter back and forth, the flow of conversation reminds me so much of like if you get kind of condensed down a game and like
yes,
all the funny stuff between characters and the role play that happens. Like it's not just a murder hobo event, like they're actually, it's a role play. You could tell it's
right,
a very heavily role played game, not just, oh, we're going to go in and beat people up and get done. No. So I really loved all of the dialogue, the backgrounds with the characters. I like the fact that it was a little on the nose. They're like literally
yes,
like, no, this is my background.
yeah, yeah,
And you could tell that it was in your face what their like flaws were, what their backstories were, what their favorite things were. Like, you know, the whole thing with Michelle Rodriguez's character eating potatoes the whole time. You know, it's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just
And that is
hilarious to
the
me.
quintessential like D&D thing, like where your character
Cabbages.
has some type of yeah, like exactly yeah, my
Yeah.
cabbages, but like the has some little thing and it carries a through line throughout the
Yes.
whole yeah,
I
yeah,
loved, but you
agree.
know, I'm a potato girl anyways.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if
true.
I
Yeah,
have always said, if I was ever lost on an island somewhere and I got to choose one item to take with me, food substance wise, it would be a potato
a
because you could do
potato. Yeah,
anything with it.
yeah,
I would need potato and salt, and then I'm good.
yeah.
But so that was one of the things I liked the most. I liked the fact that while you really knew like what each person was, I don't know. I didn't feel like their characters were cheesy. You know, I felt
Mm-mm.
like some of the dialogue could have been a little cheesy, and maybe this like storyline a little bit on the nose. But I felt like character wise, I feel like they all really did a great job of just being their character.
I
Um,
agree with that, and I would even go so far as to say that like for most of us sitting around a table, we're not actors. We're not, we
what?
don't all do voices. We don't do all those things. But
You do
at
great
the
voices.
table, when we, but when we're at the table, right? We think at least, and we do for that table pull off the amazing lines, and we
Yeah.
do pull off the amazing action at our table, and someone else looking in on that may not like understand why it is the way it is, or it may seem a little cheesy to them, but in the
Yeah.
moment when your character does something awesome and you roll that nat 20 or you pull off that one thing that you were really trying to do, that's pretty amazing. And I feel as if the movie did a good job, like you said, of some of the
Hmm.
dialogue being a little cheesy. It's almost like when players are trying to sound a certain way, but they don't quite pull it off, or they go
Yeah.
over the top in a certain way. So, and I could be reading into all this too much, but that's just me with the experience playing D&D that I have with multiple people at different tables. I feel like that's what they were going for. I could be wrong, and I think they pulled it off really well. So,
So yeah, I agree. I do. They pulled it off really well. And one of the so the story was great. It had a lot of color, it had a lot of like depth, it had a lot
mhm.
of like angst in the, you know, the whole reason why there's all this stuff going on. Like there's vengeance and then there's, you know, somebody trying to
Yeah,
learn his magic. You know, I don't know. It was a good story. I felt like
it
and it
wasn't a
was
groundbreaking story though, right? Like this was
no,
normal
but it was a
stuff that you would see. So,
conclusive,
yes, yeah,
good story. Like something that
right,
could really, it could be a campaign or it could be a
hundred
portion
percent.
of a game you've played.
Yep.
One, or at least one character's arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really. And so what I had fun doing though is I had fun sitting there and I trying to, with a critical eye, think of every single thing. Like, oh, he tripped, that was a natural one. Oh, he did this, that. Oh, she must have rolled real good. Like, oh, this happened. Oh, her axe leveled up. Oh, like I sat there and I was like breaking it apart as kind of like a player would. And then the different spells that they were casting, I was like, ooh, was that so-and-so? Ooh, was that this? No, well, they're a sorcerer and they're a wizard. And then, like, oh, they're a druid. Okay, all right.
They were really good about the spells, too.
They were great. Yeah. And they were a little, do feel like they were a little on the nose with some of them. Sometimes they oversaid some of it in dialogue, I think, to maybe make a connection to their customer that maybe isn't as diehard D&D, to be like, like if you're somebody who doesn't know D&D and you go and watch it, you're like, oh, what just happened? Well, they're telling you what just happened. They said it.
They do a little bit of explaining.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that I really liked was Mr. and I'm probably not going to say his name right, Rene Jean Page, or however you say, he's French, I think. Oh, the Paladin. Guys, he came from Bridgerton. It was one of his biggest splashes was he was the sexy Duke in Bridgerton, and he only did one season and decided not to do a season. And so now he shows up. The next thing I'm really kind of seeing him on is this. He is still smoking hot. So
he's sexier now because he did the D&D movie.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And the type of character he played, it's like he pulled it off. I don't know. I came away going, he's got some. He's a great actor.
He is a highlight of that movie to me. I thought he nailed that, because it's easy to make a paladin character feel too like by the book and too whatever. He made that character by the book in a way that was funny, but also it worked really well for the character, and it wasn't over the top. He was still an awesome, paladin. He knew what he was doing, and I think, and different. It doesn't hurt that he's just a really good looking dude.
He's a really good looking dude, and he's got an accent. I mean, come on, a sexy accent. And then the only other thing I was a little disappointed about with that is the fact that he wasn't a main character. He is very clearly an NPC who comes along and helps the group, and thankfully, the dungeon master didn't allow him to take over and win the day. He just helped them, and then he kind of faded into the background. And it's even funny because they talk about him walking. They're like, gosh, he even walks away in a great manner,
great straight line. Yeah.
Who is this guy?
The other possibility is maybe he wasn't so much NPC character, but maybe he was a player that came in for just a quick period of time and then had to leave. So that's another option too. He was the guest player that joined the party for a little while, because we've all had that happen at our table. So but either way, I thought he was and for those of you that are thinking that he does have a significant amount of screen time. It's not like he is in and out. So if you're going to see the movie because you want to check him out, he's in there.
He's in there plenty.
You'll get your fill.
He's in the meat of the story. He's just not from start to finish there the whole time. But he has a great amount of time and a very important role. Yes.
I would say, So we'll let you keep going with what you thought. What are your other favorites?
So then I think, I didn't really know, when you saw the previews and we did the reaction video that we did right when all that stuff came out, you already knew about the Red Wizards. I haven't been around D&D long enough or know much of the backstory enough, because a lot of times we play on your world that you created. So I didn't really know about the Red Wizards. You explained them to me a little bit. So they were super cool bad guys, super bad guys, scary bad guys. And the lady who played the main person, she did a great job, I felt.
Really good.
Real spooky. She did a great job. She pulled off being bald, which is not easy, but bald but gaunt, kind of creepy looking. She did a really great job. and the outfits were really nice. And then, there was the little Easter eggs here and there. I did like, even though I talked about it seeming kind of Hunger Games like, I still did really like when they were in the games, in the maze. And the maze kept changing, and all the beasts came out, and they had the gelatinous cubes, and it felt very D&D, with the displacer beasts and whatnot. So, and then I sat there and I did try to count how many times the druid shifted her form.
I was wondering
in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was like, what level is she? She's this, this, all in a row. And I'm going, well,
yeah, they had to give a little bit of a break for that for the movie, I think.
I thought it was cool though. She was a good character. But then, they get into the maze and they have to work all that out. And I think they did a really good job, and then we got a couple little Easter eggs with some things in throughout, as time went on. But overall, it was enjoyable. We're going to, we'll take Ethan to see it next weekend or whenever it comes out. So
we went on this one with just the two of us. We will take our 10-year-old here soon, but we wanted to check it out first. And also he was doing spring break and he's with grandparents for the weekend. Mm-hmm. So it was a perfect chance for us to do that. Yes. And now we know, we'll be okay. So in our opinion, you guys, your mileage may vary. You're your own parents if you have kids out there, so you decide. But I feel like it's something that he could watch.
It was super clean. There may have been a curse word or two, and then at one point I think somebody gets beheaded, but it's in the background and there's not a lot of blood or gore associated with it. Like it's just kind of
no worse, and maybe even a little bit less than Marvel movie. So I'm trying to give you a good guide. So if your kids are okay watching Marvel movies, they will probably be fine in our opinion. So
and did we get 3 dragons?
Well, it's kind of weird. We had multiple. We'll say we have multiple dragons because there were some back story type things. One of the things I have to say, one of the things I really liked, probably the most about the movie, was how well they worked in the pure D&D things. There are some things that are very D&D specific, meaning that they may exist in other games, but like the Speak with Dead spell is always something that will start people thinking ahead of time. If you watch Critical Role, you've seen it happen on not the animated series, but like if you watch people play D&D, you'll probably run into this. If you played a home game where someone has this spell, you get to ask 5 questions. And so they use that trope so well because it turns into, almost inevitably at your table, it turns into, okay, well, what questions are we going to ask? I don't know. What do you want to ask? And it's always like running out of questions or not asking the right thing or, oh man, we need to ask something else. Oh, let's find another body and raise that dead. And so in short, you could find a skeleton or something that's been dead for a long time. You cast a spell and then they will answer 5 questions. So it's a way of getting information, but they handled that so well. And I thought that was a good indication that the people, the producers or the directors, whoever it were that really started this, knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And got the humor, because it was funny just for being on screen. It was funnier knowing that that's happened at my table before. You know what I mean? Like so I think those moments of seeing something on screen and then knowing, oh, I've done what that person is doing on screen. Didn't physically do it in real life, but my character, when I role played that character, or when a player role played it, I've seen other people do this, like in my imagination or in the story that we were creating. And I think this is one of those times where it's like, it's a very unique thing. When you have a movie like this, it's different. Like when you go watch, a good example, Lord of the Rings, or if you went to go watch Harry Potter or whatever, and you love the books, and then you go watch the movie and you say, I'm going to compare what's happening on screen to what was in my imagination when I was reading the book. And that is something that happens all the time. This is very different because what they're showing on screen is tapping into what millions of people have done in their imaginations together, cooperatively, sitting at a table with friends. And it goes deeper when you can get the same joke or the same reaction from action or the same yes, like that you have had years before. So I think it's a pretty unique thing. It's probably one of the few times that you've seen that. I guess video games do it sometime, like video games movies, but this is pretty unique that like you can get that same feeling. So that's probably my favorite thing about the whole movie is like that was sprinkled throughout where like you recognize something that not only you knew because you read, but you've done it or someone at your table has done it.
Right.
Like a wild shape is a good example for you. Like your character has wild shaped. And so you automatically were thinking, how many times was that? Like you're supposed to do this?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and what was really interesting too is that they kept referring to it as wild shape. There's a wild shape here. There's a wild shape. No, they didn't keep saying druid. They just kept saying wild shape. So I found that interesting. That and that speaks to the type of druid, So that was interesting to me that that was seen more as like a title, like a person who a wild shaper type person versus like they're just a druid and they could do a ton of things. Like she really played Circle of Moon. Like she was,
yeah. And it was almost as if like, and maybe I'm missing something, but it was almost like they were detecting a druid in wild shape form. Like, and I think that's what they were calling wild shape, but it was like, that's cool that they recognize that much in that world that they can say they can do that. It was a really well thought out thing. The way the magic objects were handled, I thought was pretty well done. And like you said, I thought was really insightful is that when you play D&D, you're not always good at what you're doing. Like you sometimes are like rolling ones or rolling bad. And
come on, his foot's caught on my headphones.
Speaking of rolling a one,
cat hair.
Yeah,
that was the wild shape.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see what he turns into next.
Right.
But like you said, like when you're playing D&D, you're not always awesome. Sometimes you fail and you do things that are, and it's part of the story. It's part of the game. And they did that so well. Like you said before, I thought it was really insightful because
I feel like Chris Pine's character had a ton of that.
He had a ton of that. The sorcerer had a ton of that.
Yeah.
A lot of it was a confidence thing, but like it was played as a confidence thing. Like when you screw up some things, even like the joke about I don't want to give too much away, but there was a joke about one of the wild shapes, and how that played out was funny too, and it kind of leads into like the intelligence level of certain characters. That was kind of poked fun at in a few different times, and which is pretty normal for a D&D game. So I feel like they did a good job of getting the feel for what a D&D game is. I will say, I don't think it's a perfect movie, so I don't want anybody to think that like I'm just coming at this with like everything is great about it. And people that aren't D&D fans, maybe they don't see all this stuff that I'm seeing, and maybe they don't enjoy it to the level I'm enjoying it because of all of the meta like levels of like things they put in. But I still think even with all that, I think it's just a fun popcorn movie. It's something that you can go to, watch and just have a good time with the family or with whoever, and just spend a good afternoon or evening or whatever just watching.
You could have it playing in the background at home, while you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's just once it's out and about, we'll probably get it just because I think it's one of those that the more you watch it, the more you're going to see. I really do. Yeah. There's like so much is thrown at you. There's so much eye candy the whole time. You're like, oh, wait, I know that. Oh, even the places. They mention all the places that they're going, and they're all really well-known places, in Faerun. And it's like, you're like, oh, okay, here. And then they've got these lords visiting from here. And, so.
I was kind of expecting some other characters to show up. They name dropped a couple characters, but I did not see characters that also exist in that world that have had book series and all kinds of things.
Right.
And what's cool is that if this does well and they continue with more movies, that there's opportunity to bring those characters in and to have more stuff. Yeah, and the barbarian in the movie is was kicked out of Tribe of the Elk from Icewind Dale. So those of you that have read the whole um, Driss Do'Urden book series and know about Wolfgar and the Tribe of the Elk and all that stuff, you'll kind of see how they could pull in characters from that world. So it's really interesting. One thing I will say, I'm not gonna do the spoiler of. I won't give a spoiler of some of the things, but one spoiler I thought that was really interesting that I thought was funny on a different meta level is there was a cameo, minor character, but there was a cameo by Bradley Cooper, and also playing a small person. He was not Rocket Raccoon. He was a small person. I thought it was a very good character. It was just kind of even keeled. Did not think he was going to be in it. Makes me wonder if Bradley Cooper plays D&D now. Like,
Does it?
I don't, because I'm like,
yeah.
There's a lot of other people that might have made a cameo. It's just funny that it was him that made the cameo. So I don't know.
I agree. I think so too. And then once they were in the maze portion of it, you saw one thing, I saw another, and kind of almost at the same time, we're both like, oh,
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And it was like split second, like you had to know the genre and you have to know current pop culture genre and past pop culture genre, to get some of the cameos and Easter eggs and things that were happening. So do you want to divulge what that one was?
Well,
oh, come on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's so short. Like if people don't know to look for it, it's one of those things you might catch on your second viewing, So
let's say this. There's the one I can confirm because I've seen. I can't confirm the one Crystal saw because I didn't see it. It doesn't mean she's wrong. I just want to make sure that we're being honest about that, because if you go in and you see something
I'm not wrong.
Let us know in the comments if there's something. I just didn't see it, and it could have been I just looked down to get a drink or something. So
no, you were looking at the other group. It was at the same time.
And they were two different places? Okay.
They were crossing each other.
Okay. All right. So I saw, and they show up again a little bit more prominently, the cast of the animated Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. So they all you can tell that it's them.
Yeah.
By the way, they use those same characters in the most recent D&D starter set that got released. They use them as artwork throughout that starter set, but they show up not really speaking roles, but like they show up in the maze that's going on. And then what did you see?
So what happens is there's like this maze gladiator thing, arena thing that they have to kind of fight in, and so our group comes up, and then two other groups start coming up on the floor too, and so then they all take off when there's the gong or whatever happens. So they all start running. Well, Brian nudges me because he sees the old school, D&D group. They're heading off to the right. Well, as that's happening, I see Vox Machina like heading off to the left. They're like crisscrossing, and I was like, "Oh, Vox Machina!" And he's like, "Yeah." But I think he was looking at the other group. So,
and what's funny is that's like the original animated D&D cast versus the modern D&D cast.
And it was
just
second. Like it was super quick. So it's one of those things that if you don't know to look for it, you're gonna go, wait, hold on, what was that like?
So if you go to watch it again, if you're watching this long, we already told you about the spoilers. So but
spoiler.
If you go to watch it, keep your eyes peeled when they get to the arena scene. They've had that in the trailers too, so it's not like we're giving anything away. There's the arena scene where they had the displacer beast and the gelatinous cube, that whole area. When that happens, just keep your eyes peeled for potentially
when it starts,
two groups. Yeah,
they all get situated on the field.
Yep.
and then there's a
So
gong for it to commence.
so that's where you want to
Start,
just pay
yeah, you
attention.
want to
Yeah.
watch right in those first couple of 10-15 seconds, because that's where you're really kind of where you'll see that at. But I thought, I was like, oh, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh.
So yeah, I
So
mean, I think it's one of those things where like you're gonna find stuff that we didn't find. If you do, please add it in the comments. Let us know what you found. So when we check it out for another time, because we're gonna go take Ethan. So make sure you let us know if you see anything that we should be
yeah,
looking for, and we'll make sure to keep our eyes peeled. But man, I was pleasantly surprised. You know what's funny is like when we were heading in, we had talked to the couple. I would safely say, and this is hopefully if they're watching, because we ended up giving them a card and sharing some dice with them as we were finishing up. But I would say that they are a generation ahead of us, probably. And he's been playing D&D for a long time. She's been playing D&D for a long time. And when we brought up and they were the ones that actually spoke to us because we were playing rollies and said, "Hey, I can tell what movie you guys are watching," and we were like, "Yeah." You too? And they were, "Yep." And they said, or he said, "I just hope it's better than the other ones that came out." So you have to know I'm in the same boat. Like there have been a lot of D&D movies, and it didn't matter how bad I thought they were going to be.
yeah,
I've watched every one of them because that's just the way it goes. So
yeah,
I was very pleasantly surprised by how well this turned out.
yeah.
So I think they did a good job. But again, don't take this as this is the best movie of the year, any of that
Well, and
stuff.
and I
You
think
know,
like they ended up sitting behind us. And I
that's
think
right.
even
Yeah,
when it was over, we all kind of stood up, and he said, "I was expecting a 2 out of 10, and I feel like I got a 9 out of 10."
yeah.
Like,
So
so
and that says a lot
he
for
thought it
someone.
was good too. So
I would from the little bit of conversation I had, I would imagine he was uh first edition or second, at least first edition D&D player. Maybe he started second edition, but first edition D&D, and has been playing maybe different editions since then. But again, for someone that started during that
yeah,
era, or maybe
yeah,
even earlier, I don't know, to say that after watching a movie, that says something too, because they're getting the feel right of what the game is on screen. So
yeah.
yeah,
I say if you want to be entertained and you love D&D, go and see it, because
I agree.
it definitely covers those criteria. I mean, it's not going to win the highest awards at the, whichever award show, but when it's all said and done, it's a niche, it's a
Yeah,
little bit of a niche audience, and they're
I'm
trying to
curious.
appeal to a wider array. And so I think that they did a good job. I think that they really did a good job. You don't feel left out, I think, even if you don't know a lot about D&D. I
Yeah.
think that the story is good enough, and they explain enough. There's enough action, there's enough dialogue, there's enough things that they really kind of explain to you. I think anybody can watch it and really get what they're doing. So,
Now, having said all of that, and I agree with everything you just said, if you're watching this, you probably do play D&D or some type of role-playing game. If you're just caught this because we shared it on our social media and your family or friends and you don't play D&D yet,
yeah.
but you go watch the movie. If you go watch the movie and you're like, "Oh, that seems like a lot of fun." There are starter sets. There are ways to get into this game. We have a whole channel with tips on
Yep.
how to get started, and other things. So this is something that you could do at your table with your friends or even your family. You could bring your kids in and have a game, and you could relive that same type of adventure, whether you're playing D&D or Pathfinder or any other tabletop role-playing game. You can do the same type of stuff. I will say though, if you want your game to be more serious, more tactical, more whatever, you could do that too. When you go watch a movie, you are limited to what they are showing you. When you're playing a game at your table, you create the story. So
Yes.
you can make your game be more Lord of the
Imagination.
Rings or
Yeah.
more Harry Potter. You can make it
Yeah.
be whatever you want to be. More Blade Runner if you want. There are sci-fi versions of role-playing games that
Yeah.
you can
Or
definitely play.
cyberpunk,
So
whatever.
it just I hope it opens you up to even though the movie is sort of the entryway for a lot of people, hopefully new players, I hope it opens up some new people into having fun, sitting around with a group of people at a table, playing a game, laughing, telling a story together. We did that this weekend. We actually had a game at the house, and it was a blast. And with people that don't get a chance to play all the time, and we had fun.
Yeah.
So I hope, if anything, that's what you take away from the D&D movie is if you like it, you could do the same thing in your living room or your dining room at a table with some dice and a pencil and paper and a book. You know, you can do the same thing. So yeah, that's what I would say.
A whole lot of dice.
Yeah, a whole lot of dice as the dice.
You really just need to make friends with someone who has a lot, really, you know.
Yeah. We had enough and I will say Crystal graciously, since she had enough duplicate dice, we took some with us to the theater today, and we gave a few D20s out to people just to you know, in solidarity of going to see something that we all enjoy. So
that we love.
It was really nice of Crystal to do. So all right, everybody, I think we'll wrap it up, but I hope you get a chance to go enjoy the movie. If you do, like I said, comment below, let us know what you think, and if you caught anything that we missed, make sure you leave it so we can catch it the second time around. So all right, everybody, have a great evening.
Thanks.
Bye.